Hey, writer, ready to take your fiction to the next level? Whether you've just got a great idea or you're already stuck in the murky middle of writing your book, the Wicked Good Fiction Bootcamp I designed just for you. This 8-week self paced online course gives you the tools, the guidance, and the support you need to get to the end of your book and know that it is wicked good. Head to suzyvidori.com/bootcamp or follow the link in the show notes for more information and get started today. I'll see you inside where I'll be there to support you as you comment and share your work throughout the course. Welcome to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Suzy Vidori, where I teach you the tried and true secrets to writing fiction, nonfiction that are going to wow your readers, broken down step by step. We're going to explore writing techniques. I'm going to show you a glimpse behind the scenes of successful writers' careers that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. And I'm also going to coach writers live on their pages so that you can learn and transform your own storytelling. Whether you're just starting out, you're drafting your first book, you're editing, or you're currently rewriting that book, or maybe even your 10th book, this show's going to help you unlock the writing skills that you didn't even know you needed, but you definitely do. I'm so looking forward to helping you get your amazing ideas from your mind onto your pages in an exciting way for both you and your readers so that you can achieve your wildest writing dreams. And you're going to also have some fun doing it. Let's dive in. Stephanie Dethlefs is a fellow writing coach who works with writers on the process of writing. And she's always finding awesome ways to get words on the page with them, whether they're tackling a full novel, a short story, or whatever else they want to write. She's a former teacher and a self professed introvert and Enneagram 6. She's also an avid flash fiction writer these days who set a goal this year of earning 100 rejections, which I love. Stephanie lives in the Pacific Northwest, but we recently met up in person to record this for you. And Steph shared her best strategies on how to get started. And she's got some really interesting takes on how to work on your mindset as well as how to get started story wise. Steph helps writers a ton and keeps them moving forward. She is so inspiring, and I can't wait for you to meet her on this episode. Welcome, Steph, to the show. This has been a long time coming.
Yeah, it has. Thank you for having me.
And, we've talked about you coming on the show before, and now we are actually sharing a blueberry drink here.
Delightful.
A good day. I don't get a ton of opportunity. I've had this amazing chance to meet with so many of my colleagues and to do these in person. They are my absolute favorite shows. We're going to talk with Steph today about one of her favorite subjects, and maybe not one of your favorite subjects, dear writer, but getting started and what, like, mindset wise and story wise and all the things. Steph's a writing coach and an amazing writer herself. Let's get started.
Let's get into it.
Get into
Excited.
it. Yeah, well, you're excited about talking about this. And
Mhm.
what is it that lights you up about helping writers, quote unquote, get started? Like, where did this come from, this intrigue?
Yeah, well, it's a couple of reasons. First of all, when I say getting started, I'm really referring to a couple of different things. So there's getting started on a singular project. So if you have a book in mind, you have a story that you want to put on the page, whether it's book length or shorter or whatever it is, there's that, how do I start? Where do I start? It's too big. I don't know. So there's that piece. And then there's also the getting started. I talk a lot about the routines and rituals around building a writing practice. And so there's also that, like, how do I start today when I've got 5,000 other things that I could be doing? And so there's kind of those two things. But the answer to your question is that I have talked to so many writers over the last few years who have lived with the desire to write or the desire to tell a specific story for so long.
Yeah, they feel called to
They
write
feel
it.
called to write
Yeah.
it or just called to write in general, but they don't consider themselves writers. they tell themselves all of the stuff, which I'm sure you've talked about with your listeners.
Oh, yes,
about
listeners know if you are writing, you are a writer. And even if you're not writing, but feel called to be a writer,
you're a writer.
you are a writer.
And there's all those voices that are in your head, like not good enough, all that stuff. Who do I think I am to tell this story, that keep us from doing it? But what I've noticed is that it really becomes a weight on those people. It drags them down.
Yeah,
It
I've felt that myself, and I'm sure you
yeah,
have.
I have too. It keeps them from kind of not just being able to be creative in other ways, but like almost from living a full life. I don't mean to pull anybody down. Like if you're not writing, you're not living a full life. That's not what I mean. It's just it becomes this obstacle that's in your way, and it's
If you
a
feel
weight.
called to do it and you can't answer the call,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And you're keeping yourself from doing it.
Yeah.
And, I have the perfect example of this which I've shared a lot, and I know I won't name her, but I know she's okay talking about it, is I have a long-term client who she is in her early 60s, and she has had a story in her mind, or the characters at least, and their backstories for 30 years.
Wow.
30 years.
And you hear that so often. I mean,
Yeah.
30's a lot, but yeah,
Yeah.
a
And
decade is not that uncommon.
yeah, these characters were living rent free in her head, and she didn't know what to do with them. And she started and stopped and started and stopped a lot during those years. And they grew with her and aged with her. Like they were really young when she was younger, and then they became middle-aged people when she was. I mean,
Love
it's
that.
such an interesting story. And I met her because I was teaching a class in my community, and she came and she was like, I have to get this out of my brain. I have to let them out. And so she's just kind of a classic example of why it just warms my heart to see people actually, whatever their intentions are at the end of the day, like if they want it to be published or whatever is fine with me. I just want them to get it out of their heart, out of their head, onto the
Absolutely.
page.
And you don't know. I mean, yes, maybe your intention is to get that big book deal. And I do have clients that do that, but there's other people who don't have that and just their lives change and that weight is lifted and they have done the thing.
Mhm.
Is not being able to get started, is that writer's block? What do you think? Is that the
Oh,
same thing as when people say, I mean, not Hollywood's version of writer's block where you're banging your head on the table and
right,
staring at a blank page, and
right.
then one day the light bulb goes off and you write your opus? Like,
Yeah.
not that, but like, is that what we call writer's block? Is not getting started?
I don't, I have kind of complicated feelings about writer's block, and I might not articulate it very well. I think everybody's so different. I say this a lot. There's no right way to do this thing called writing. And so there's really only your way. And if part of your process is to not write for a while and then come back to it when you're ready, like maybe give yourself grace around that. So I don't really know I don't think I can personally define writer's block. However, I will say that about 3 years ago, I started writing a second middle grade novel, and I was working with a book coach. I was doing all the things. I had it all planned out, and I started getting into the writing, and I keep saying I broke myself,
I heard you say that
which is
about more than one thing,
yeah.
actually, but
I broke myself as a writer. Like I literally didn't write for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And it was weighing on me that I wasn't writing. I didn't know if eventually I'd go back to that project. It wasn't the project, it wasn't the coach. Like she's a dear friend, and it was all fine, the process. It's just something about forcing that particular story out of me.
wasn't
It
working.
wasn't working, and all of the noise came into my head. And so for me, I felt very blocked. I think I was blocked, I was broken, however you want to write it or say it. But yeah, I just think it's different for everyone. And I'm not sure that not being able to get started is the same. It might be.
Yeah.
I think it all comes from the same place.
But there's no like one definition. You're right. Everything is different, and I like to ask this question just because it's so related to the topic, because people are always like, "Hey, do you want to talk about writer's block?" And I don't love talking about it because I think there's people that say it's a myth, it doesn't exist, but there are people who aren't writing or can't get started. And so that's real. I think writer's block in general is just this catch all phrase for all the reasons why you might not be writing. And getting deeper and diagnosing what it is for you is what matters,
Yeah.
right?
And I will say that what got me out of that period was not to put pressure on myself about any particular project, but just to start to practice thinking of writing with some playfulness and some curiosity rather than deadlines and expectations.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, what I've found as well is there's always a good and real, not imaginary reason why you're not writing. If you can get to the bottom of that, you can probably solve that. For a lot of writers, it's that they don't know, or they haven't given themselves enough skills
Hmm.
to progress. I'm sure that wasn't it for you, but there's other reasons. But sometimes, and if you're listening to this podcast trying to figure out this thing called writing, you're doing what you need to do. You're giving yourself those skills. And so I don't know who needs to hear that today. But
Absolutely.
thank you for sharing your story. I know that you're also an avid flash fiction writer, and I
Yeah.
just love it when you talk about it. How is this different from writing a book or something else for
Well,
you?
so just to define it for people who don't know, Flash is, some people say it's stories under 1,000 words. Some people say the cutoff is 750 words. Then there's microfiction, which some people say is under 300 words. But basically, it's just very, very short stories, which I think of them as like blink of an eye. Like there is a larger story at play, but it's just like a snapshot of one moment in time that illustrates the larger story. So if you're interested, you can just Google flash fiction and a bazillion examples of good flash fiction will pop up. So look
But
at it, it's
what
fun.
is it about
So
that sort of method or doing flash fiction? Like I wish you guys could see Steph's face because she's just like
I know I love it so much.
giggling and smiling from ear to ear about the flash fiction. Like, what is it about that helps you get started?
Yeah. Well, because it isn't so big, it isn't so unwieldy as a book idea. It's a little easier to spend time, write something, realize it's terrible, put it in a drawer, pull it out again a few weeks later and go, well, maybe I can take these two sentences and toss the rest. I mean it just is a little, it's it's less unwieldy than a larger project. And so there is that. I'm not saying it's easier because it is most certainly not. It's just there's fewer moving parts, right? I think that writing with brevity is comes naturally to me. Even my middle grade novel that is published unspoken is fairly short. It has fairly short chapters. They're kind of like snapshots, and there's some poems in there, and there's some text message exchanges in there. And I think that sort of like, I like the quote unquote white space on the page,
And that's what makes you a terrific, person to do the business writing and your copy and the things that
Yeah.
your newsletter and all those things that go out are also that
Yeah.
that brevity that
I think we all have a style of writing that we gravitate toward, and I've only recently returned to it, and I'm calling it my first love, like my first boyfriend. I've gone back to, no, I haven't. Sorry, husband. Um, but anyway, it's been really fun to return to it. And, it's interesting to think about it as a way of maybe getting started even on a larger project, even if you never intend to like try to submit flash fiction anywhere, have it published. It could be a really interesting exercise for getting unstuck or for exploring themes in your story or for even just sketching out a scene and seeing how few words you could write it in and really distill it down to what it's really about, and then flesh it out, and add all of the details that you want to add to make it the larger story. So, I mean, I think they're very companionable. I think that novels, and I think all forms, all lengths are all very companionable. I mean, even poetry and novels or memoirs can be companionable, right? Like you can
Yeah.
play between genres and it'll just help you figure out what it is you're trying to say.
And I just had this image of it's like that flash fiction brought you back from that heaviness and helped you rediscover, I mean, yes, your first love, your love of writing. And I was just thinking about, speaking of husbands, my teenage kids when they were tweens, they loved this dance show, and it was a tween show about this like dance troupe. And my husband would come into the room because it was very formulaic. It was cute, and there was lots of dance routines, and they were always breaking up with somebody or somebody's fighting with somebody. But in the end, they rediscovered their love of dance. And my husband used to walk in and they're watching it, and it was called, I think it's called The Last Dance. Can't even
Okay.
remember what it's called. And he would come in and say, "Have they rediscovered their love of dance yet?" Like that's all he knew about the show. And I'm like,
Yeah.
just listening to you talk, it's like some of these techniques and writing flash fiction, I think for you has helped you rediscover your love of, and
Yeah.
wherever that leads is wherever it leads. And
Yeah. I mean, I have ideas for book projects still. Who knows? I might even return to that one that I say broke me, because I still love those characters and think that there's a story there. And so I am not ruling out what's happening in the future. I see like an interconnected story collection. I think that I really love to not put expectations of genre on myself. I think it's important to know the rules before you break the rules, but I think in the drafting part, in the beginning parts, I think allowing yourself to be playful and curious and what's
the
going to come
playful
out
and
of me
curious.
today,
Yeah.
what feels fun today, and not to diminish the work of writing a book,
Oh, I
because
know
it
that you
is,
know the work. You have finished a
yeah,
novel. You've worked with many people who
it
have finished
is
a novel.
it is work. There's no doubt about that, but the practice, at least the practice of drafting it, should feel a little bit joyful, I
Yes,
think.
I love that. I love that for you, and just knowing who you are and watching you smile right now, even talking about it is amazing. Okay. So, what are some things that you can do? Put your writing coach hat on. As a writer, our listeners today, if they are feeling that heaviness and they are having trouble getting started, mindset wise, what are the things that you find help your clients do that?
Well, it depends on what the trouble is. If the trouble, so I'll give you two answers, right? A and B, and maybe a combination of both. If the problem is mindset, so if they're having a lot of trouble with the thoughts that they're having around not being good enough, or who am I kidding to think that I can write a book, or
Oh, that
that
hurts my heart.
I know, or that anyone's going to care about this, all that noise that our brain tells us.
Mean brain. Brains can be
Mean brain,
mean. I
mean
always say
brain.
brains are weird, brains are cool, brains are amazing. Brains can be mean.
Yeah, especially that part, but it helps me a lot. And I always share this. I feel like I say this so much, people might get sick of hearing me say it,
I
but
haven't heard it, I don't think.
okay.
Maybe I have.
Maybe you have. You might be
That's
surprised.
right.
That really all of that is fear, whether you call it the inner critic or whatever you call it. It's just fear. And that fear is coming from the part of your brain that has not evolved since our ancestors were living in caves. And that part of our brain tells us to stay in the cave and to not make anybody mad in the group, because then you'll get kicked out. And so stay safe, stay safe. That's all that part of your brain wants you to do. And so I like to think of that now, I'm going to say, I mean, I'm 52 years old, and it's literally taken me my entire life to get to this point of really understanding it. Like I understood it intellectually, but it's
Yeah.
taken a long time for me to like deeply understand it,
And
which is that when those thoughts come into your head, they're not telling you the truth. What they're telling you is how they think you should stay safe. And it's a part of you, but it's a part of you that's not
Which is don't write.
right. Don't write. It's too scary. It's too dangerous. You will
You're
lead
leaving the
people
cave
astray.
and you're
Yeah,
making people mad.
all of that.
Yeah.
And so when I hear those thoughts come up in my head, I kind of go, okay, I see you. You're trying to keep me safe. Thank you. I don't need you right now. And just sort of let them be there. I really don't like some of the language around the inner critic sometimes on the internet and in writing books because it's like vanquish the inner critic and beat it up and get rid of it. And it's not ever going to go away. It's part of you, it's part of your brain. So let it be there, but just you don't have to listen to it. You can say, thank you. I see what you're doing. And it's okay. It's like a small child, right? You're throwing a tantrum in the grocery aisle because you want the cookies. I'm not going to buy you the cookies. I'm going to pat you on the head and we're going to go to the checkout line. It's kind of the same.
We're not going to go to the checkout line with the cookies,
Not
to
with
be
the
clear,
cookies.
but we're not going to
No.
argue about it because you can't argue with that
No,
part of the brain.
you can't argue with that. So we're just gonna go to the checkout line. We're gonna be quiet. And in this case, I hear you complaining that I shouldn't be writing, but I'm gonna do it anyway, and everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah. And I just love that you are bringing true brain science into this because
Yeah.
it's the way that I teach as well when we're thinking about the reader and how they're reacting to your story. And, I guess I've never really thought about how our own brains work to resist or to sabotage us. And if you're listening to this episode because you are true and goodly stuck, maybe this is what's happening. And I love that.
Yeah. That's part A, that to your answer to your question about
How to get started
advice that I give
mindset
people.
wise.
Yeah. So if that's the problem is mindset, which 9 times out of 10 it is, sometimes the problem is not really being clear on what the story is. That's the other issue. And so that can generate a lot of doubt as well and can contribute to the mindset problems. And so if that's the problem, I talk about I call it the groundwork. And it's really three things. So what is it that you're trying to say? What's the premise? What's the point you're trying to make about the world? How is your character going to start and end the story? Like, how are they going to change from the beginning to the end?
Absolutely. And if you're writing about your own life, that's
Yep.
you.
You're the character.
You're the main character,
Yeah.
giving off that main character
Yeah.
energy.
And you have to know there has to be an evolution. It doesn't have to be huge, but there has to be some sort of change. And so figuring that out. And then maybe choosing a few, I don't know, I say 3 to 5, but it doesn't really matter. Kind of turning point scenes where, and you don't have to know all the details, but where is the character or you, if you're writing a memoir, going to bump up against things that are challenging your beliefs about yourself or the characters believing about themselves that are going to produce that evolution. So those are the three things that I work through with people, and just doing that little bit of work, because really it's not that much.
You're not writing, you're writing bullet points and
Right.
answering
And it's
questions, right?
brainstorming and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a lot of outlining unless that works for you. I don't force that on people unless they want to plot out the entire book. But just having that sense of clarity gives you some targets to write toward, which feels a lot more manageable than just a giant story with so many words and you don't know where to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. This is amazing. So we've talked about mindset wise and story wise, how to get going. That's kind of the one time thing in getting started. But you were also talking at the beginning about how do you sit down every time to write? And if that's your issue, what are some things that you found help you, help your clients to get started? I mean, even if it's not that we're not afraid to start book or the flash fiction or whatever we're choosing. Why don't we do it again and again and again?
Right. And I mean, it's kind of like going to the gym, right? If or whatever. It's like sometimes
Not my favorite bad
not my
example.
favorite, not my favorite either, but let's just use it as an example. Sometimes you're really like excited to go or you're feeling pumped or you're like, yeah, I'm feeling lots of energy. And sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I have to drag myself to the gym and I don't want to go. And this is no different, just like anything else. So I think the first thing is
I like to have gym.
oh, I know. Well, I like to have written.
Yeah. So I
So
like to have written, but we
yeah,
gotta do the writing
yeah.
to have written.
Yeah, so I think the first step is giving yourself grace around that, that some days are going to be easier than others, and some days it won't happen. And beating yourself up about it not happening is really only going to make the whole thing harder. So that's the first thing. And then I talk to people about setting up little rituals. Now, I use that word and it might sound a little woo woo, but bear with me for a second
A
because
little woo woo.
I'm a little woo woo too.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I might be more woo woo than you.
Probably.
But
Most people are. I'm trying to be the woo
yeah,
and I'm not the woo woo.
right, right. Yeah, a little bit of
Yet.
woo is okay.
Trying.
So sensory stuff helps a lot with our brains. Like if we
Now,
can
brain science
brain
is not what
science.
it's
No,
not
it's
woo woo
not.
to me.
And we know that sensory things can trigger things in your brain. So if you associate like pouring yourself a certain cup of tea that you really like the smell of and the taste of, and that you only have it when you're writing, that becomes like a draw, like, ooh, it's a treat now that I get to have because I'm sitting down to write. So there's that. Candles can be the same. I use an oracle card deck. I told you I was more woo-woo than you,
I love
but
it.
I'm not super
I
like
didn't even own an oracle card
I
deck,
don't
but
even
now I want to go to your office and
yeah,
get my cards read or something. I
I
don't
don't
even
even
know if
really
that's a
know
thing.
how to read them. I just pull one and I read the description in the little guide and I'm like, okay. And and that's it. But that's part of my little like, okay, my brain goes, now this
Now we're
is our
writing.
writing time. Yeah.
Cool.
So focus. So there's that. I think those are just my examples. I think that each of you listening, can come up with things that work for you. But I think
Make it the same.
yeah, make it the same every time.
It's Pavlov's dog, right?
Yeah,
Like ring the bell,
yeah,
Sorry, I'm Canadian. I'm going to sing a song that
yeah.
maybe you don't all know, but it's ring a bell and I'll salivate. And how'd you like that? All right. Tell me in the comments who sings it, because if you're Canadian, you know it.
Yeah, I
Okay,
do
keep
not know
going.
that song. So anyway, yeah, so just make it a treat. Like do things for yourself. Have like a special cozy blanket that you put over your lap when you're right. I mean, it could be literally anything. So yeah, I think that's one thing. I actually this year I bought myself a giant laminated wall calendar. So it has all the months
Oh
on
yes,
one
you've told
sheet.
me about this. I actually need a snapshot of that, by the way.
Okay.
You're gonna send it to
Yeah,
me.
I will send it
Okay.
to you. So if it's the squares are tiny. The poster's huge, but the squares are tiny because I'll talk on.
365
Yeah.
or
So I put a little dry erase star on every time I write. I give myself a literal star.
why is it not permanent? Why would you erase
Well,
it? Does
because
that
I
day
want to
only exist, or is it like a
it's a dry erase thing. So I'm gonna erase it and
can
start
you use it next year?
yeah,
Oh,
start
okay. I
next
thought
year.
it was like a 2025 and I was
Yeah.
confused about the driver.
So I look up there and I see, even if like last week I only wrote one day because I wasn't feeling very well and I just didn't have good energy. And so,
And
but there
that's
was
okay.
one star up there and I was like, at least I wrote on Monday, and that felt good. It's like rewarding yourself in ways that work for you. And everybody's different again. So my little tricks might not work for you, although you're welcome to borrow them if you'd
Okay.
like.
This is like the most amazing segue ever, and Steph hasn't seen my questions into the next question, which I did not prep you for.
Great.
So you came from teaching.
Hmm.
And I love working with writers, and many of us come, it's like the only profession that we come to from other places, and all of our skills and knowledge is what makes our writing special. So what skills and advice did you take with you? Did you bring with you as a teacher? I mean, gold stars and wall
Yeah.
calendars, it's like the perfect, you already
And
answered the question.
Post-its and all of those
This is
things.
good.
Yeah.
What else do you feel like that prepared you for that you
Well,
wouldn't have if you hadn't been a teacher first?
yeah, it's really funny because I'm one of those people that has known that writing was important to me since I was a kid. And so when I went into teaching, I made it important for the kids too. I was an elementary school teacher, so I was working with younger kids. And writing time was a safe space. It was really like, I don't know about you, but when I learned writing in school, it was not creative. It was, we're all going to write about this plant or whatever, it just wasn't, there wasn't space to kind of explore our own ideas. And I mean, I didn't invent this. It's a whole school of thought for teaching writing, but I very much, would give them a skill to consider in their writing, and then they would go off and work on whatever they were working on. And I would try to get around to as many of them as I could in a day and check in and like guide them in what they were actually practicing. I think that what that gave me was the realization that I wasn't treating myself the way I was treating my students.
Oh,
And
right.
so, I wrote off and on while I was teaching. I taught for 14 years or something like that before I left the classroom. During that time, I kind of wrote off and on, like I took the occasional writing class or whatever and would have motivation, and then it would peter out because I was busy. And I just realized I wasn't giving myself the same grace and encouragement and space that I was giving my students. And I think that that goes for a lot of us. Like if we're parents, are we giving ourselves the same space we give our kids? The
Definitely
same,
not.
definitely not, right? Or our
Yeah.
other loved ones, are we talking to ourselves the same way we're talking to them? I mean, that's an adage that like has been totally overused, but you treat yourself worse than you treat other people. And why is
Which is
that?
funny because it's like the opposite of treat others the way that you want to be treated. It's like
Right.
we don't actually treat ourselves that well, or we don't treat
No.
it like it's like the opposite.
I know.
Yeah, it's
So I
interesting.
think that's an interesting question, and I'm going to think about it more. But I think that's probably the biggest thing that I took from that I reflected on once I left the classroom. When I left the classroom, I was about maybe 2/3 of the way through my first draft of my book. And so, when I left, I knew that would be the next thing that I did.
Yeah.
I had this
You
space
had a
to be able
goal.
to do that. And so I dove into that, and I think that was really when I realized, oh, I need to I need to be nicer to myself about this, or it's never going to get done.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, but thank you. I know it's kind of a weird thing that we don't think about, but that as writers, we talk about our own unique voice and our own unique experiences. Give yourself credit for what the hell you did before you
Yeah.
wanted to be a writer or what you're doing now. All of it matters, and you don't need to hide that piece of yourself. In fact, that's going to make you resilient and make you stronger and make you different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay. So these are my fun questions that I like to ask all the writers that come on the show, unless I forget. But how long did it take you to write that first book
Okay, so like I said, I started it while I was full-time teaching, so it was very slow
and
going,
full-time parenting?
and full-time parenting because I had elementary age kids too, so that was a whole thing. So I would say that I worked on the draft for about 2 years while I was teaching full-time, and in definite spurts. It was not every day or anything close to every day. And then after I left the classroom, because I had more time, I worked on it pretty steadily. So that was in 2017. And it came out, that was June of 2017 when I left the classroom. And the book came out in late February of 2020, which was delightful.
Great timing.
Delightful
Great timing.
timing. But so, yeah, it took me 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's not a long book.
And mine was 4.5. But
Yeah.
like I love asking that question because I think, we tout I've asked it of some guests who said 1 month or
Yeah.
something, and that does happen too. But we tend to focus on that, and everybody's journey is different. Steph, what was your first big break where you're like, all right, I'm a writer. This is what I'm at.
Yeah.
Like, what was it?
So I guess my oldest was a baby. My youngest wasn't born yet. I was teaching half time. So I was home with her half the day and teaching half the day. And during that time, I was like, I'm going to get back into writing because having a baby and a job is Not enough to do.
I did the same thing. I did the same thing when my last child was born on mat leave, and I was like, this is my last mat leave. I am never doing this again. Now I better get it done.
Right. So I took a little writing class. It was actually a writing class meant for moms, and it was focused on essay writing, which I was really into then. I also write some flash nonfiction because I like to delve the depths of my life and put them all over the page. So it was about essay writing, and I wrote an essay. It was a totally lighthearted essay about my daughter on a road trip, or us trying to ridiculously parent a toddler on a long road trip to a wedding. And it was not my usual thing because I'm very moody and emotional in my writing. Yeah, it gets a little dark. And so
I believe that. I believe that.
Yeah. And so this was pretty lighthearted, but it was the first thing I ever wrote that got published. And my husband, it was an online magazine, and this is in the late 2000s. So it was like 2007, maybe. And he printed it out. So it has like the ads and all the things. And he put it in a frame and hung it on the wall, which I still have. It was very delightful.
And that was the moment.
That was I was like, that's my name. I mean, I had been like on the school paper and whatever, so I had seen my name in a byline before, but that was the first time I was like, somebody actually wanted to publish that and thought it was good enough to go. It's not the best thing I ever wrote, but it was the first time I was like, oh, maybe what I write can appeal to other people in a way I hadn't expected.
Oh,
so yeah.
I love it. Okay. What's your best writing advice for new writers just starting out? If you were to go back, what would you have wanted to know?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think that the spirit of curiosity and playfulness and not taking it quite so seriously. And again, this is such a new revelation for me, such a new understanding that
I love it for you, though. It fits you so well.
Yeah, I haven't fully wrapped my brain around it yet, but I'm just trying to live with it and experience it. Just being okay with all of it, being okay with the writing coming out and sounding terrible, being okay with being rejected, being okay with missing a day of writing that you expected to write, being okay with all of it being part of the process, and just not getting yourself so tangled up in knots about it, because when we do that, it just creates a bigger mindset issue. And then we have to deal with that bigger mindset issue. And then we start thinking that it's all true and we never write anything. So,
yeah, I mean, you're feeling called to be creative. So that curiosity and that playfulness is a really good way to go about calling in your creativity. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing as a writing coach? Where can we find you?
yeah, so the best place to find me, well, I'll give you a couple of places. On my website, which is stephaniedethlefs.com, which you can find the spelling for that, I'm sure, in the show notes.
They'll be in the show notes.
There is a free resources page. That's a great place to go just to get some free things that I have created over the past few years that might help you on your journey. And then I'm really active right now on Substack. And so whether or not you yourself have an account on Substack, you can still subscribe to things on there.
What will we get if we subscribe to your Substack?
So
I get it. I love it.
Yeah, so I have free, it's kind of like a blog. So there's free blog posts. They come to your email. Also on there, I offer monthly workshops on first draft craft. I have a monthly gathering of writers where we literally just sit for an hour on Zoom and talk about this thing that we love to do. We have a loose topic every month, but it's just conversation and it's delightful. I have some new things coming this year that I'm super excited about. So that's a great place to find me. It's where most of my stuff is happening right now. I also work one-on-one with people. So if you're curious about that, you can just head to my website.
If you're curious and
curious and playful about that, I would love to be curious and playful with you.
So amazing. Thank you so much for being here today, Steph.
You're welcome. I loved it. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Suzy Vidori. Help me continue to bring you the straight goods for that book you're writing or planning to write. Please consider subscribing to this podcast and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Also visit suzyvidori.com/newsletter to hop on my weekly inspired writing newsletter list, where you'll stay inspired and be the first to know about upcoming training, events, and writing courses that happen in my community. If you're feeling brave, check the show notes and send us a page of your writing that isn't quite where you want it to be yet for our Show Don't Tell page review episodes. Remember, that book and your writing is going to open doors that you haven't even thought of yet, and I can't wait to help you make it the absolute best. If you're feeling called to write that book, keep going, and I'm going to be right here cheering you on. See you again next week.